Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys have been following along on the page, you guys have been realizing that the H2 has been slightly absent lately. And the observational mind may be able to tell exactly why. You see, the H2's always had a little bit of a cooling problem. This was a big issue for me back when I first bought this bike back in 2024. I think I had like the first viral video that was talking about the overheating problems that the H2 has, which come to find out isn't really that big of a deal if you ride the H2 like you are a normal human being. Because back then, I wouldn't ride it like it was a normal human being that fit into society like a normal person that I am now, which is why I was overheating the dang thing every time I'd take it out. The H2 is a boosted vehicle. That's why it's famous. That's why it makes like the really cool fluttery sound, but it doesn't have a specially made intercooler for the bike that pretty much every other supercharged or turbocharged vehicle on the market has that cools that supercharged air before it goes into the motor. That can cause overheating problems if you're just laying on the throttle everywhere you go, which should be a difficult thing when you ride a motorcycle with 250 horsepower. But back when I was younger and stupider, that's what I would do, and that's why I had overheating problems. It's not a big deal these days, and that's not what today's video is about. No, the H2 also has just regular cooling problems, which is why it has blasted coolant all over my motor. This is the second time I've tried to repair this cooling system, and it's just, I'm giving up. I like working on my own bikes. I've been starting to do it a lot more often these days, which you guys can see on camera, but I mean, that's terribly popular. You guys don't really like watching me just work on my bikes. Just statistically, I'm sure there's some people out there that do. Statistically speaking, you guys don't like to watch it, which is fine. I just like doing it. I'll do it sometimes, but that is just not what I like to do often. And to be honest with you, this is the second time that this has happened. I'm kind of just done dealing with this. So I got a dealership to do it for me. It's fine. The H2 just has a small little habit of blowing coolant all over the motor, which we'll talk about.
Now, if all goes according to plan today, we should have a pretty interesting day. Cold start on the 2024 Kawasaki H2 that I haven't started in over a month. There we go. Oh, it's just incredible. I probably shouldn't be riding this bike this hard when it's leaking coolant all over the side of the case. So before I bring this bike in, I want to show you guys exactly what's been going on with this bike to try to explain everything. As you guys can see, there's a bunch of fluid all over the side of this bike, which is not supposed to be there. It's puddling up back there. It's all over the supercharger, all over the side of the case. That right there, because you can tell by the blue color, that is coolant. I had an issue not too long ago with this bike with it doing this exact same issue. I thought it was because the coolant in this bike was 2 years old, which typically should be fine for coolant, but it is in the owner's manual that you're supposed to replace the coolant after 2 years. So I was like, all right, fine, let's just follow the owner's manual and replace the coolant, which I did by myself, which was super sick. That was the first time I ever did coolant on a motorcycle, and I learned a lot from doing it on this bike. Always highly recommend working on your own bikes. If you want something done right, you usually got to do it yourself. However, this is now the second time that it's been blowing coolant all over the bike, and so now I know that there's something more going on with this thing. So I reached out to my good friend Jixabro not too long ago, and I asked him, like, hey, like, what's going on with this? Have you had this problem in your H2? Because I know that he has one, and he rides his way harder than I do. And he told me the culprit are these factory coolant hose clamps, which you guys can, oh my god, do you guys see that just squirted all over me? That is the first time a bike has ever squirted at me. Oh my god. Never expected to see that in my life, dude. That's probably not the right term to use, but I don't know what other term to use. Yeah, I should probably not be riding this thing right now. These factory coolant hose clamps are garbage from Kawasaki. I don't know what's been going on with Kawasaki lately, dude. It seems like their quality control has just gone in the gutter, bro. It's in the trash. ZX6Rs have been blowing up for like 2 years now. The new ZX10 has been blowing up, and now I got the flagship model from Kawasaki. I think it's like the second most expensive model that they sell other than the H2R, which is the same bike. Now I have coolant blasting all over this bike because the factory coolant hoses are trash. So Jixabro informed me that I should get like the little screw-on hose clamp things. They're like 50 cents at AutoZone. That's all you really need to fix this bike. It's like a 50-cent fix. But it's just crazy to me for $36,000 for one of these bikes these days. Flagship model Kawasaki. Like, this is the top of the line Kawasaki motorcycle, and 2 years old. That's what you gotta deal with. So the current goal is we're gonna take this to a dealership that's going to fix this for basically free. I'm gonna have to pay material costs, but they're being super chill. But it is slightly concerning to ride my bike. I should have coolant in it if I check. Yeah, okay, so we're still above the high line. I mean, we're introducing a slight amount of air into the system whenever I do that. I'm like scared to do this, dude. It freaks me out because that is like super hot stuff, dude. I can burn you. And so I'm literally riding this bike while it can burn me. It's not phenomenal. We should probably be taking it pretty easy on this thing because I'm not trying to have burning coolant going down my leg. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Thrill Point Motorcycles.
So the H2 is getting dropped off for the day. They should be replacing both of these coolant hoses and then the one back there as well. And then they got to replace a little bit of the coolant because obviously now there's air in the system, which is going to cause the bike to overheat, which is not what we want. But however, we're not going to just be sitting around for the entire day. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very exciting because I was given the keys to a BMW M1000RR. Pop that sucker right in there, and then it's going to say M right there. It's not a fake M1000. Look at this. You can't fake that. This is a real one.
If you guys remember, a couple of years ago, I owned an S1000RR. Mainly, the main fact being that this bike costs almost double the amount of the S model. And what you're mainly paying for in that upgrade is going to be in the engine. There's also a couple of other minor differences, like the swing arm, I think is a little bit longer by a few millimeters. Old version of the M1000 used to have full carbon fiber bodywork, which I know that there was a bunch of people online throwing a hissy fit that this model no longer comes with full carbon fiber, which I guess if you're paying almost $50,000 for a bike, you kind of want more carbon fiber. But as someone who owns a full carbon fiber motorcycle, it doesn't really matter. Like the plastics over the carbon fiber doesn't save you any weight anyway. Also, a little bit of a bummer that the M1000 doesn't have electronic suspension like the base model does. So you're literally paying almost double the price for worse suspension, kind of, basically. At least on the street, like, I would prefer to have electronic suspension. Wow, this cockpit is so, like, bulbous. You guys see that? Also, this seat is incredibly high up. I am 6'1", by the way. Like, I'm not gonna call myself a short king, but this is the first bike I think I've ever gotten on that I can't flat foot. I am tiptoeing both my feet right now. Which wheel this thing down here. So I did do a video with this bike a couple of days ago on TikTok, if you guys remember. I was not allowed to ride this bike back then because this bike is so expensive that the dealership's insurance would not cover it. The only reason I have the opportunity to ride this bike today is because, for all intents and purposes, I signed all of the paperwork to buy this motorcycle today. With my discussion with the dealership is, if as long as I don't crash this bike, I'm not on the hook for paying for it. And if I successfully bring this bike back in one piece without scratching it or dropping it or whatever, they will rip up all the paperwork and I don't own the bike. For all intents and purposes, right now, I am technically the owner of an M1000RR. And with all that being said, let's get a little cold chart. The way I've had them described to me is it's basically an S1000RR, but running on ethanol, like E85. So it rides pretty similar, like they're smooth, they're fun to ride, but they're just like a little bit peppier. So I'm a little bit excited to see what that's like. So just a words of heads up, I do want to go into this with a little bit of a harsh attitude. Just like with every motorcycle I buy or that I ride, I like to go into things with a neutral attitude. A lot of motorcycles have a lot of hype behind them because a lot of people are like fanboys, especially over the Beamers, dude. Like, oh my god. The BMWs definitely have a reputation being like the TikTok bike because it is by far the easiest 1000 to ride. And especially when a bike costs almost as much as a luxury car, or actually costs more than a lot of luxury cars, I would like to go into them with a little bit more of an attitude of like, I want to judge it. This is very much a bike that is not for most people. And so I would prefer to kind of point out the flaws to kind of make people be like, oh, like, you're not really missing out on that much versus like the base model. Now that my biases are out of the way, however, I really am excited to ride this bike. See, what I'm curious about is if this thing's really that much more responsive. Kind of. I mean, not really. It's really hard to compare because I don't have an S1000 right next to me right now, like to ride back to back. I'm trying to judge this, like thinking about my old S1000, but then I'm also like comparing it mentally to other bikes I have on my mind. And I'm gonna be honest, this is kind of a bike, like looking down at the tachometer every time I give this bike throttle, this is gonna be a really hard bike to use, the whole tachometer, dude. 16,000 RPMs is kind of hard to use on the road, dude, I'm not gonna lie. Oh wow, okay, that is quite fast. You also gotta think, I just came from my H2, like I rode the H2 to the dealership, so I'm comparing this to a bike that technically has more power, although this is making it way smoother. Just incredible, dude. This is smooth. I mean, this is S1000. This is like what the S1000 feels like. It's really not that different from what I've felt on the S. That's what's like, it's really not selling it to me just yet. Okay, alright, I thought that. Good God, that is fun. Okay, the S1000 is fun in general. The M1000 I feel like is supposed to be like an extra level of that. Yeah, that is like really fun to flip between your legs. That's super easy. Let's see if we can make something happen here. Yeah, I mean, it's fast. Now, the downside to the M1K seems to be the suspension, dude. You can just tell, like, the engine is just peppier than the S1000. Like, the way it just, like, see how fast that revs up? The reason you're paying $20,000 more is for that engine, because it has lighter internals, that costs a lot more money, and that's why it costs $20,000 more. I'd hope it revs faster, dude. But this suspension is not good, dude. The S1000, like, with the electronic dampening on that bike, that is by far one of the smoothest sport bikes to ride. And I can tell you for a fact, right now, this isn't even that bumpy of a road. This is like around the area in which I live. I regularly ride on this road with all of my bikes. And like, oh my god, like even just that, like that's not even that big of a bump. Now, I am not a motorcycle reviewer. I never claimed to be. I'm just a dude that happens to really appreciate motorcycles. It is what it is. I just don't want me to be the deciding factor on if you like this bike or not. I'm literally just trying to share my feelings based off of the motorcycles I have owned and ridden in the past from kind of just like a normal person's perspective, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not a motorcycle track rider. I'm not like the best motorcycle rider of all time. You got to throw this bike in the first gear, hold down this little starter switch right here. This is why I came to a little private parking lot in order to do this. Hold that down and then you just go. I was also digging through the menus on this bike trying to find like anything that's different from the base S1000. I gotta be honest, I can't really find anything. Like the riding modes are the exact same as the S model. Like you're paying $20,000 for not much more customization. Seems like it's about the exact same, which is not like a complaint. Like BMW's ride selection modes are pretty freaking good from the factory, but it just, I'm having a hard time justifying, which again, as what I said before I even got into this bike, it seems to me like it's really hard to justify buying this over an S1000RR. Like if you want to stand out from all the guys that have regular S models, like this is certainly a way to do it. It just seems to me if you're trying to ball on a budget, kind of like historically I've tried to do. Like, I've never been one to really be interested in buying special editions. Like, I don't see you getting $20,000 more out of this experience over a regular S. Again, I'm not a reviewer. Maybe you'd notice a lot more of the differences if I had more experience, or maybe if I had this back-to-back with an S1000 on track. But I'm working with what I got, and I'm primarily a street rider that just enjoys taking my bikes out for a nice weekend cruise, and I just don't see you getting $20,000 more of experience out of that. Like, riding this just really makes me miss my S1000RR, if I'm honest. I would just personally pick an S1000RR with the electronic suspension over this bike, which is just insane to say because this costs double the price.
This one's for the ladies and maybe a guy. You can just fit your whole arm in here. My God, you can finger the air filter, dude. Look at that fistage. Wait, let me get my whole arm. Look at that. You can get like my whole forearm in there, dude. Oh my God. Disgusting. In summary, I like the bike a lot. It's just not that much more of an experience over just a regular S model. I think the guys that were overhyping this bike a little bit might have been exactly that. They're just overhyping it slightly, which I think people have a habit of doing when they spend $50,000 on a bike. They want to justify their purchase by saying it's the best thing ever, even though it's really not that much more than just a regular S. Was it still a phenomenal and fun experience? Yes. Would I love to buy this bike? Yes. Would I want to spend my own $50,000 on this bike? Absolutely not. All right, boys, we're going 2 for 2 with superbikes today. This was the other bike that was in that TikTok that I did the other day. This is a 2026 Ducati Panigale V4R. Similar to the BMW, it's a very expensive, very expensive superbike that is meant to race in the WSBK World Superbike Series. The way that this bike differs from my other V4 that I just sold from my Yamaha R1 is instead of having a 1198cc motor, this only has a 998cc, so it's a smaller engine, surprisingly. However, just like the BMW, it does rev a little bit higher at 16,500 RPM. So even though it's technically a smaller motor than my previous V4, it actually makes a little bit more horsepower at like 230 horsepower with that full exhaust on there. All right. Oh boy. All right. This is a $60,000 bike we're on right now. We just got to be really careful not to mess this thing up. Holy God, this bike knows how to get the heart rate bumping though. This is going to be fun. This is going to take some getting used to. Oh my God. All right. The brakes. I mean, I'm so focused on like not trying to hurt myself on a public road. I am quickly starting to realize the number one issue with the V4R, and that is simply the fact that this thing costs $60,000. This motorcycle that is now blowing hot air all over me costs more than the van I bought so I could travel the country. There are a few interesting little party tricks about the V4R, and as a fact, it is the only production motorcycle, I believe, with a neutral lockout, which basically means when this bike is in first gear like that, if you don't hold that lever, you can't shift into neutral. Again, this is like race motorcycle stuff. It has a sequential
sequential gearbox. There's no neutral in between first and second. So you gotta hold that lever and then you can shift safely into neutral, which is just, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, it's bizarre. And you're also paying $60,000 for a motorcycle just like the BMW for a motorcycle that doesn't have electronic suspension. So you are stuck with the manual Öhlins, which is still a pretty good set of suspension. It's just really hard to justify 60 grand for a bike without electronic stuff. I gotta be honest, it is really hard to review or even attempt to review bikes of this caliber while just street riding, while still like trying to maintain some level of self-preservation. It is really difficult. Oh my god. Oh my god, this is kind of my issues with just Ducatis in general. They already have this issue of feeling way faster than what they actually are. So this could be very comparable in speed to the BMW. It's just way more intense of an emotion. I gotta wait for that car to get way in front because this is just, I'm gonna catch up to him so fast. Okay, yeah, wow. Like, this bike right here costs more than this dude's car. Like, that is not, like, that's pretty much everything else on the road. That is just insanity and honestly not necessary.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Two of the most expensive motorcycles that I would never consider buying in my life. Are they unbelievably fast and exhilarating? Absolutely, that's not what I'm saying. But just for $60,000, I just have a hard time justifying it over a base model. I feel like if you have to be on track to notice the difference of a bike, it's just not gonna be worth it. I honestly think for the same reason that this bike exists is the same reason like really expensive watches exist. Like you can buy like a $20 Casio or something, it's gonna tell you the time, but then there's also $200,000 mechanical watches that like tell the time through like astrophysics or whatever. Like that's kind of just what the point of these bikes exist. And I'm not saying that they're not cool. They are. They're marvels of engineering. They absolutely are, especially that neutral lockout. Like there's a lot of really interesting engineering things that are different from any other motorcycle out there. And out there is going to be someone who's going to pay for it. And that's fine. I don't want to crap on your purchase. If you can notice the difference, maybe it's something I just can't. But just given my experience and what I personally like to do with my motorcycles, I'm glad I thoroughly got to ride these bikes before ever dreaming of ideally purchasing them, because I definitely learned a lot about myself today. So I can appreciate the V4R for teaching me that.
And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we got the H2 back. The guys back there replaced all the coolant clamps. These literally are like $3 clamps, and so I don't even think they charged me for it. It was nothing. So once again, I just want to say a huge shout out to Thrill Point. You guys were super sick for helping me out. And I know I spent a pretty good chunk of this video talking about S1Ks. This dealership has a bunch of them right now if you guys want to check them out. They have a pretty large selection of S1Ks right now. You guys should definitely check them out because those are the bikes I would buy personally over the two bikes that we rode today.
Just look at that H2 gleaming in the sun. Now that we officially have this bike home and that it's fixed, I think now is the time where I can explain how I think that these clamps are the perfect explanation as to why I love this bike over the bikes that we just rode today. I feel like I've been doing social media long enough, I can already kind of like foresee comments. I can see the comments before that you guys even type them out and post them in my section. So I can already tell you guys are gonna be confused on why I own bikes like the H2 or even the Daytona, for example, that's sitting right over there. There it is. Like, why do I have these special edition bikes if I don't like special edition? And that is because I like the most unique experiences for the least amount of money possible. Bikes like the H2 and the Daytona 765 are basically, they are base models even though they're special editions. Or even the Fireblade, for example. That's another great example. These are bikes that are special editions, yes, in name only. The Ninja H2 is the base model of that engine. You cannot get that engine. Like the Ninja SX and the naked version of that bike are not the same motor. The Daytona 765 was only made in the Daytona form for that 1 year. The Fireblade that I just bought is technically a special edition. It's got SP in the name, but there's no base model of that engine made in the United States. That is the only way you can get that engine and that frame is by buying that special edition. Now, bikes like the V4R and the M1000 are just higher echelon versions of their base models. They are special editions, yes, but the reason I don't respect them as much is because that you can just buy the base model and get 99.9% of the experience. Meanwhile, if you buy a regular street triple 765, you're getting a similar experience, but it's very different because it's not a sport bike. It's not a fully faired sport bike. Or if you buy a base model CBR 1000, it's an entirely different engine and frame. It's not even remotely the same bike. I just wanted to throw that clarification out there because I feel like I don't want you guys to see it as hypocritical. I have my reasons for things, and I am incredibly grateful I got to ride those two bikes today. While I am incredibly grateful I got to ride the M1000 and the V4R today, it would just be doing you guys a disservice if I wasn't honest with you guys about those. And again, take my advice with a grain of salt. I'm not a motorcycle reviewer, never claimed to be. I'm not an expert with this stuff, but I do think I'm a pretty good representation of the average motorcycle rider who has some level of self-preservation. So if you're worried about missing out on any experience on a $60,000 bike over its $20,000 counterpart, I think that $20,000 counterpart is going to be perfectly attainable for you, and you're not going to be missing out on that much. Now, with all that being said, I think I've pretty much gone on rambling enough in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I'm glad we got to do something different today, and I added 2 new bikes to my list of bikes that I've ridden. So that was cool. But with all that being said, my name's been Thought Taken, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.